All right, I'm so excited to be here today, and I really don't like starting with anything negative. I kind of built a little bit of a system. We talked before about how do we find out kind of where we're at and why we're here, and how do we find out what the principles are that we need to watch for to be able to make a change. We built that, and so it's actually a little mini course. So on your handouts you see on the back, the black and white part that talks about content on the website, where it says Start Here tab, and it talks about how that's kind of a great place to start. We have that, and it's a little bit of like a mini course where somebody can go through, get a solid foundation in these true principles, and then to be able to understand really the three main options of playing fields of what's out there and available. And I did that on purpose because I got really tired of all of the stress and all of the anxiety and the contention around all the things that are wrong. And I said, you know what, if we put it in one place where it's just really organized, people can kind of go through, not super negative, just understanding kind of where we're at and how the pieces went together. I don't have to talk about this anymore, but of course, there's something that I haven't been able to escape from, and I found this quote. So I want to make it very clear, this is a quote, this is not American Family Education or Kathryn Spencer. This is something that I pulled off the internet, and the reason why I'm reading this verbatim is because it really sums up something that I keep hearing over and over. So we'll talk about that in just a second, but here's the start of the quote, not my words. Some parents completely disengage themselves from their obligations to oversee and ensure the successful education of their children. Some parents act as if the responsibility to educate and even care for their child is primarily the responsibility of the public school system. As a result, our teachers and schools have been forced to become surrogate parents, expected to do everything from behavioral counseling to providing adequate nutrition to teaching sex education, as well as ensuring full college and career readiness. Unfortunately, in this system, the teachers rarely receive meaningful support or engagement from parents and occasionally face retaliation when they attempt to hold a child accountable for bad behavior or poor academic performance. So, this is an injudicious study of cause and effect. Teachers, okay, sorry. I have heard this garbage from educators, from parents that have been taught this is a truth, from very constitutionally minded leaders in our government who we trust and we say, oh, they're going to advocate for us, they really understand the Constitution, they understand freedom principles, they really care. You hear the same kind of thing when you really kind of push them and say, okay, so you're saying you're going to help us. You're saying you care about parent choice and parent responsibility. Awesome, okay, well, there's a way that parents can be completely free and autonomous from these expectations that would hurt what they're trying to do. Well, but some parents. So I feel like I'm a very peaceful person on some things, and I can be very patient, but it takes a lot of people skills to listen to that over and over and over. So I just wanted to address that really quickly. Parents do not need to be more obedient to someone else's coercive system. Parents do not need to continue. Thank you for cheering. Parents do not need to give up more of their culture that they're creating for their children. They do not need to give up more of their autonomy. They do not need to give up more of their relationship with those children for some lie of a promised end that if you just give them to us, it's going to be great. And here's the other side of that. Teachers, most of them started out because they wanted to change the world. They wanted to make a difference. And what did they find? They go into this system, we call it the education matrix. They go into that, and they're so controlled and so bound that they have to kind of work into that system. And so here's kind of my unapologetic commentary to teachers. Let me find this really quick so I get it right. Oh, so teachers, I love you. You're wonderful. We need more teachers, but we need more true teachers. Teachers, you are not more important in that child's life than their parents. You do not know them better. You do not understand what they're meant to do in their life. You do not understand what their needs are. You do not need to have a better relationship with those children than their parents. In that year you have them, let's say you're their only teacher in a little red schoolhouse for all of their education. You do not need to have more influence than those parents. You need to understand your role. And it is not that. It is not taking the place of the parents, and it's not helping those teachers who wanted to go in and do something wonderful. Those teachers want to go and inspire. How about we let them do it? Wouldn't that be amazing to have a place where the teachers can come and inspire? But that's what they're called to do, and that's their purpose. It's not to judge. It's not to plan. It's not to think ahead. It's not to understand those kids better and to try and separate them. And really, is it the parents' fault that we're in the situation? Guys, like, I'm in the right environment. You guys know this. It's not really, we can't blame and judge the parents. We can't force the parents to feel like they need to fix everything. I know that a lot of us kind of felt that way at the beginning of this journey, that we needed to come in and how can we start a revolution? That's what we're doing. But the parents were taught on purpose, systematically, with principles, with systems in place. That structure was built to separate the relationship between the parent and the child. That's what it's for, and that's what it's done. And so we all have this fight, this dissonance in our mind of, well, why is this so comfortable? Maybe we should do it, everyone's doing it. But it's that discomfort in your heart. You know that if you're the parent of that child, there's a reason why that child is yours. You are divinely placed to have that connection with that child, not the teacher. And so we need to be able to create a system where we can take that back. And so I'm going to talk about a lot of what we do is actually unifying families and building that relationship between parent and children. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to watch my time. But we need to stop guilting the parents and telling them it's their fault that this came to where we're at. It's not their fault. And we need to create a structure where that brand new mom that still doesn't know what she's going to do if she's with her kids all day, because that's stressful, where she can come in and be able to build that relationship as her children are being built towards understanding their purpose. And the mom that says, I absolutely want to influence, I'm ready for this, and to have that association where that's normal and that's comfortable, and there's tools in place to really help facilitate where they need to go and what they feel is the most important use and purpose for their time with these wonderful, amazing children that came into our lives that we have some stewardship to help raise. So now I will start. I love you guys. Okay, so these are the 13 principles that I feel are best suited for us individually, but also if you're looking at any organization, why would we think of an organization that's kind of this organic living thing? It needs to have the same principles in place as we as a person would need to have in place to be able to have a very meaningful life and to work towards what we feel is success. So the first principle is purpose. So I want you to think for a minute and feel free to, write down. I think each of you should have had a handout from the back table. If you don't, I highly encourage you to grab one. That's a tool that we use, and we're going to walk through that a couple times throughout my presentation. But think about, what is the purpose of life? Right? We're here absolutely on purpose. We're here to learn, we're here to grow, and we're here to prepare, because this isn't it. Today is not the end, right? And even if it's the end of one stage of your life, it's still not the end. Like, it's a process, right? Okay, so that's purpose of life. It's big, really important. Okay, what's the purpose of a family? In the family unit, isn't that the best environment for these kids to understand their purpose, understand where they came from, understand their worth, and who they really are? The family unit is where that happens. So what's the purpose of education? I really like to think that the purpose of education, in the way that my brain works, is education is something that pulls you further than what is familiar. Right? So in the family unit, there are things that you really have access to. Everyone needs that. These kids need time with you. We've lost that generational influence that we used to have. We've lost the parents being able to really understand every aspect of what's going on. That needs to be there, but then there's things that are outside of what's familiar that these kids need access to, and a lot of us as adults need access to, that we need to reach out, whether it's reaching out to a classic book that comes into the home and it becomes part of what we're doing, that's education, or whether it's going out, whether it's finding mentors, having different experiences, stretching ourselves, that's education, where you're pulling outside of that really, really important base that needs to be protected and needs to be there. All right. Sorry as I flip around, I'm not used to having notes with what I'm doing. Okay, so on your handout at the very bottom, you'll have a little box, and it talks about your why. I'd love for you to just take a quick second, and this is an exercise we do with the kids. Basically what we're doing is we take the children from a point where, you see that? Oh, I should have one up here too. The Oak's holding one. Thank you guys so much for passing that out. So children start out, they're not self-governing. Can we all agree that when we are born here on earth, like we're not ready to just be independent and be left to our own devices? That would be not okay, right? We wouldn't be here today. So it starts out parent-led. You are there. And that needs to be something that we encourage and that we support, and that there's a way to really even help at that stage. But then to be able to move towards children understanding that they have this really individual purpose and adults finding this. So this is for you to write down. I want you to really think about, what is your purpose on earth? Why are you here? What's your individual and unique mission? What's your definition of success? Even if you just write down a couple key points that mean something to you personally. Are kids starting at an age when they're just kind of stepping into recognizing that education is a tool for them to go somewhere? Once a month they're going through this process where they're looking at, if I feel like my world worked out the way it's supposed to work out, everything turned out the way it should, who am I? What are the attributes that people would recognize about me? What are the things I'm able to do for my community? What's that change that I want to be able to make? And then I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do, but I want you to just kind of write some of those key points for you. So that's purpose. So as an organization, if we set up anything for any cause, for any purpose, I don't care if it's talking about how to wash a dog better. Is purpose important? Absolutely. We need to have that main focus be the main thing. And so whenever we have an educational purpose, ours is absolutely to unify families, to strengthen the relationships between parents and children, for kids to be able to find their own specific purpose. And we focus on the means, things like setting goals, having morals, those kinds of things. And then each individual finds their very purposeful and unique and individual end. That's not our role to promise an end result. It never works out in any society if you ever do that, by the way. So I think we can all think of an example of that. All right, so next, if we're going to have a purpose-driven focus for education, it's going to take a lot of character. And one of my favorite quotes that just brought me a lot of clarity of why this word is so important, it talks about integrity. How wonderful is integrity? We need to have integrity. But you need to have integrity plus courage to have character. Once you have character, we talked a little bit at our table about the difference between a rebel and a rascal. We really feel like we're the rascals. We're different. We don't need to blend in. We don't need to follow someone else's system. We need to do what's right, even if it's stepping outside of the box. We will unify with others that have that rascal heart, that want to do what's right and stand for good and make a change and honor their own individual purpose and mission. Even if somebody else looks at that and says, I don't understand why you're doing more. Isn't this good enough? That's okay. That's fine. But to have that character, it takes a ton of courage to this. Have any of you, just a little raise a hand, have you ever chosen to do something that might be a little different? But you knew it was good, right? And did you get feedback? Yeah? Like, it's not very helpful, is it? That story of like the crabs, and they're trying to get out of the pot, and what happens? You don't have to put a lid on. They hold each other down. It takes so much courage to do something different. So as a program, what we've put together, American Family Education is not worried about being gentle enough to kind of sneak in some kind of back door. We're going to aim for the highest good. We're going to aim for the most character, the most integrity, be the most courageous, and then the people who connect with us, who see some value, maybe they just take one piece and that's all they want. Fantastic, that's great. But we're not going to limit what we see as the highest good to try to save any of that conflict. We're not worried about that. And it's been really fun to kind of function this, but I really do, for this next one, I want to admit, I skipped one, hold on. This is really important. Okay, does this sound like a lot of work to you guys? To like fight the system, to do something totally different? Does that sound like a lot of work? It's a lot of work. But it's such good work. And so here's another quote that I love. And people say where it's from. I have somebody who's going to go and watch all the movies and find out. But the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude with the problem. I love that. You guys get that? So what if the attitude of how we feel about what we're doing, what if that was a leadership principle? That we understood the power behind choosing to have an attitude to do productive, positive, uplifting things, and to not give in to negative influences that would want to bring us down and hold us back. That's a really important aspect. So this is a principle that the kids are learning. When they're learning leadership, they're absolutely learning that their attitude really, really matters, and they can shape their experience. Right? We talked a little bit about a child that's having a struggle with a certain thing. If you kind of step back to, well, how are we thinking about this? What is the point? That point, that grounding point, when you have a positive attitude towards what you're doing, scientifically, emotionally, spiritually, doors open, and you have the ability to move a lot further, a lot faster, because you have access to this principle. So that's really important. So can you guys see in your minds a world where everything that you really, really want for your children, the most amazing things, is absolutely available to you, and there's no filter you have to put it through, and there's no guidelines of, well, we have to let go of this piece because somebody else said that it would offend them? Can you envision a place where education is everything that you want and nothing that you don't? Can you visualize that? Not yet? Oh, it's coming here to you guys close by, and our perspective is we can see it because we see it every day. It's been such an amazing blessing to be in an environment where this is no longer a philosophy, it's no longer a book, it's no longer someone speaking about some nice ideas. We kind of started there looking out and saying what's out there, but I kept seeing these caveats in all of these books I was reading. I kept seeing all of these like, well, it's awesome except for, or this is really great, good principles, but we don't know how to actually make it a school, and we don't know how to replicate this experience. I kept seeing all those caveats, and I just decided, okay, well, there's enough truth, let's go. And we've had enough time. I get to see families coming into our environment, and maybe they don't see for themselves being in that place where they've got that relationship with their children, that they're the mentor, and that they know what to do next, and that their child is going to be able to, qualify to have the freedom to choose what they're going to do. They don't see that in their future. And then in a matter of a few months, their children are starting to show their parents, I do want the ability to set my own goals. I will do what it takes to have that stewardship for myself, but I will honor you as my parent to always come back and show you what it is that I really want to accomplish. But there's a process that gets there. And when you've got that process, it becomes something that goes from dreams to that very serious vision that you can really, really see it. This is a really important principle. And we can use it in our own lives when we know what it is that we really want. Let's move it from want to something that we can taste, something that we can touch, something that we can really, really see, and then start taking action towards that. All right, so this is the one where I have to make a confession. So you heard me talk about a lot of books. My husband last night talked about like the stack of books in my room and like all this. It's been a really fun process of tons and tons of study. And I really thought that maybe someone else, I'm sure, because I'm just me. This is not about me. There's got to be somebody else who's figured this out, right? Do you guys all kind of feel like that? There's got to be somebody else who has a model that works that I can just take and learn from, and it will just work. It's already done somewhere, right? There's so much amazing truth out there. There's so many amazing principles. It's got to be already done. I couldn't find that working model. It wasn't there. I found really great things, but I just couldn't find it. And so I just kind of was absorbing a lot of information and going down that path, making plans, trying things out. I love, those of you who have kids, right? You get to experiment a lot of things at home. You guys do that? Where, I think this is going to be great. Let's try this out. Oh, wonderful. That didn't work. We're going to get to adjust, right? To be able to have that freedom, and that's a big part of agency-based education. The agency is on the parents to be able to have the freedom to say, we're going to try this right now, and if that doesn't work, to be able to adjust it. That's so key. That's how parents are raised up, to be able to know what to do next. It's because you got to practice it, and maybe you didn't do it right the first time, but that's okay. But it doesn't, no flaming crashing, but absolutely opportunities to learn and grow. So a principal came into my life and I learned about community building and leadership. I learned about how to really structure something that was completely different. Most of what we see is very much corporate model. You're on the top, you earn something because it was your idea, like that kind of structure, kind of built like a pyramid. We've seen those models and those structures. It's not very inspiring to be able to have the person who's brand new feel really empowered. Is that fair to say? So I learned about how to kind of structure that way, and I started to make a plan, and I started to move a little forward, and then we started to go into action. Working with my own children, working with a group. Now we have a few schools. We can be able to see this in action and be able to do that. And the accountability is we get feedback real fast. So we'll talk about it in just a quick second. But you've got to be able to act. You've got to be able to immediately apply the principles you have access to. And that's a really key point, that if we have an educational organization, foundation, any kind of structure, a school, a co-op, a homeschool, you've got to be able to bring in a principle, make a plan, and take action on it. And then you get to check and adjust. Another term for this is scoreboard. Can we all agree that life gives you very organic scoreboards, whether you want them or not? Right? And there's one at the back of your thing that Oak handed out, scoreboards for how the speakers did. It's going to be fun. I mean, if you share that with the speakers, that's going to be awesome to see. But life is full of scoreboards. We need to recognize that as we're making these plans, as we're taking action, the next step is absolutely to check the scoreboard. How is that going? Is this helping my relationship with my child? Is this helping them understand better the purpose behind what they're learning? Is this helping them interact better with their siblings? For educational institutions outside of what we're doing, and because this is really the foundation of what we do, I encourage anyone who's in the field of education of any way or has any influence politically, pay attention to what you're doing to the family. Pay attention to the results. Pay attention. Check your results. Are you strengthening the family? Are you strengthening those children who really need to grow into being the leaders for our future and need to grow into being independent thinkers? Is that your result? Is that what you're finding and what you're encouraging or allowing? Is the system you're participating in, is that unifying your family and helping your children really understand the culture and heritage and faith that they're coming from? And if not, maybe it's time to make an adjustment and to do something different. All right, friendship. So a big point, big leadership principle. Who's thought of friendship as a leadership principle? Has anyone thought of that yet? Yeah, it so is. The way we relate to other people, the way that we're able to understand and how to connect. And so a big piece of anything that calls itself an education system, it needs to use the principles of collaboration and networking. It's got to be based off of a group coming together, learning from each other, honoring that there's going to be a bunch of different people with different perspectives that are inspired to think of these different pieces. It's got to be something that's more living, that's more of a community. It can't be based off of just one thing. It can't be based off of just, this is a really great idea, we're going to run with it and stick. How many times have we seen like a school system or a curriculum in a box, and they found something that was good, and they just kind of like just replicated it, and it became a very static thing. And it's not continuing to develop. It's not touching all these different aspects of who we are as people. We need to have something that has that feel, and then we as people need to continue to grow and develop in whatever thing that we're participating in. And our children need to learn how to be better friends. They need to learn how to carry themselves in a way that they can be attractive to building relationships that are productive and positive, and to be able to properly introduce themselves and understand maybe some personality types and some communication skills. These are valuable things that might be missing in some of what's going on out there, but we can always check and adjust, right? Wonderful. Okay. Skip to. All right. Super fun. Okay. Who thought of this one as a leadership principle? Have you guys recognized? How much power is there if this is in place or if there's a lack thereof? Who's heard the expression, follow the money? We've all heard that. But who's actually teaching us how to do that? Who's teaching us how to take ownership of understanding true financial principles that absolutely will encourage and feed the right things we want to see? for an education system, this is a key piece, and this is where at the beginning I kind of I felt a little bit like self-judging of, I understand this sounds a little crazy, but as doing these, I'm doing these spreadsheets of how we're compensating behaviors we want to encourage, and we're not compensating things that we don't want. To be able to have a model where this is a leadership principle that we need to understand, and this is not being taught in our schools. So many times we hear about colleges that say, oh great, the bank is visiting and teaching the kids how to do finances. Are they on our side? No. No offense to the individual people that may work for that system. But the system in place, that's where we got where we are. Are we happy with our results, with our financial results in our country? No. Or the other countries that may be looking into what we're doing? If you're not pleased with the financial results of what may be the government, which is just a reflection of its people, then maybe we need to change the information that we understand. Maybe we need to think about things a little differently. And I love that when you have a touch on education, you can start with minds that are open and logical and thinking through things, and you teach them about some of the fallacies that are out there and some of the truths, and it makes so much sense to them. And it just is truth, and it's just very simple. I really feel that freedom is a very simple concept. And then when you go into tyranny, it gets really complicated. If anyone questions me on that, IRS code versus the Constitution. Just a fantastic, little example there. It's a good visual, right? We need this being taught to our children, but our families need this information, and our organization needs to be sensitive to that the finances behind, how the compensation works, where the money goes, where it stays, where it's being used. That's an important piece, and that was one thing. There's great schools out there, and I love on them, and when I have the opportunity, a lot of times they'll open up about some of their business structure. There's a lot of old school thinking business structure that's along the same lines that got us to where we're at with just the state of things. So that's an important piece, even if it's not fancy. I got this picture behind because I thought that was such a beautiful picture of a market in a town. Can you guys picture that, where the financial intelligence has been raised in your community, and those children are no longer saying, but mom, just buy it. You've got that piece of plastic. Money comes out of nowhere. That's not the culture. Instead, the children are participating with their parents, working towards a goal, because they know that everything in this world makes sense and is all interconnected. So I don't want to hop on that. All right, next thing. Servant leadership. I actually had a really fun discussion with somebody recently who was questioning me on, you teach leadership, what kind of leadership? He'd read a lot of leadership books, there's a lot of leadership content, but specifically what we're doing is we're having the opportunity to really think. And so I would like you to think for yourself right now, who are you following? Who do you have as kind of your leader? And think in like a temporal sense. So here on earth, time during a week, who are you seeking out their information and their leadership to affect your life and to set your direction? Okay? And then think about, who are they following? Who's their leadership? Who are they seeking information from? And who are they seeking to become like? Well, in our program, we're a Christian-based organization. We follow the 5 tenets that the Founding Fathers said is the foundation of any sound religion. Multiple faiths come into this space and feel very comfortable and uplifted. Even those who aren't Christian come and feel very safe here, because it's a culture of just acceptance and love, but the freedom to share who you are. But that foundation is that we're becoming like Christ. And those that we're following and the information that we're seeking, we make sure that the end is becoming a servant leader like Christ, where if you have more capacity to inspire or more capacity to influence, it's to serve the other person, not to control and not to govern, but to raise them up to a place where now they can have that capacity for themselves. So servant leadership is a really important piece. And like what it implies, we really look at our staff that would be able to take care of maybe the full program of a private school, or the parent that's choosing to use this information and apply it to a homeschool. You're really serving those children. And so you're raising up in your leadership capacity, wherever it is that you're serving in that sphere, but you're becoming better so that you can serve better, so that you can help them learn how to be a servant leader and be able to recognize that they have purpose and they have things they can do in their community to make a difference. So, all right. Conflict resolution. All right, this one is awesome. Can you imagine if your kids learned conflict resolution, that was a leadership principle? Who would enjoy that in their home? That kids understood the steps. 2 hands, love it. This is a really important leadership principle. A lot of us as adults didn't learn this, right? That system we talked about, the education matrix, is actually built to break down your ability to solve your own problems. That's really part of what it's for, part of how it's structured. And so with this, we're saying, okay, we're kind of waking up a little bit of conflict by saying we're going to do something different. By being in a family, is there conflict in a family? There's a little bit of conflict there. Maybe that's something we're supposed to experience. Is that fair? That if that's how life is set up, we need to kind of have that, but we need to learn how to be able to go through and build a stronger relationship as a result. And so with this, I feel like I missed one thing right here. Anyways, oh yeah. So as we're recognizing the pieces that we need to change to be able to move forward, these principles help any organization, any family, individual. But this needs to be in place. This needs to be an acknowledged thing that we need to understand that we have the power and ownership to change it. How many things can you change if you don't feel like it's your responsibility? Nothing. If you feel like it's somebody else who needs to fix it and it's their job and it's their responsibility, you have no power to absolutely change it or to even start changing it. We need to take that ownership and say if there's something we don't like or there's something that's wrong or uncomfortable, not necessarily fault, but almost to that point where you realize that that ownership gives you the freedom to make change. It gives you the power to be able to get those answers and think things through. So let's be willing to resolve some of our conflicts. All right. Okay, systems thinking. I hope you guys can see that. Leverage. Who thinks of cogs and wheels and systems when they think about education and soft and love and relationships? We need to. It's really important. It's a lot of the power that's behind how we can do a lot of what we do. We need to be thinking about how can I leverage the most important thing. So here's like mom language. Has anyone heard of the concept of picking your battles? Yeah, that's leverage. You're picking something that you know that if you change that piece, those things that aren't as important, it's going to be okay. But you're picking the piece that needs a shift. It needs a little bit of conflict resolution, right? So we do that in our education system where we're leveraging. Can you imagine who the most important people in that child's life is to strengthen and to give correct information? Who's the most important person? The parents. So we're leveraging saying, it's not us. We're not going to fix these children. Plus our model is a very few amount of hours. Let's have them there for the most important things. Let's leverage that time, but treat it like that time is sacred. It can't be made up later. So use that, high stewardship, high value, packed full of the most amazing things that would help everyone grow to become somebody who can absolutely find their unique purpose and mission and have the capacity to go live it. But then with the rest of the time, to be able to have systems in place to protect the parents from a teacher who may have their own opinions. Protect the parents from feeling like they've got to do something because they just don't know what to do next. To be able to build that up, but then build up the parents to be in the children's minds, the heroes. To be able to let those children know that they need to honor their parents and what that really means, that their parents know them the best. They're getting messaging all day long. That's so fantastic. Go show mom and dad, see what they think, see what their other ideas are on that. They're the ones that are checking with these kids. That principle of return and report, that doesn't happen with a teacher. That teacher doesn't know best for those kids. The best leverage is the parents. If we teach the parents how to properly do return and report in a way that can help inspire these children, and the parents become the mentors, that's the very best leverage for us. So we love that. So on that page, that's the handout where you wrote a little bit of your why. That's one piece of what we call the Edge Journal. And the Edge Journal is a concrete, you can hold it, the kids bring it with them to school once they're in that mature level where they're starting to have goals personally for them. That is a safeguard where no one will ever step in, ever, for your children and say, I think I know better for you and where you're going in your future. The plan is there, and that's with your influence, with your own children. All right, we don't really have time to go into this one. It's awesome. Do you see words that you recognize in there? This is really who we are. A lot of science will take and say, great, we understand chemicals, we understand physical things. Great, and they talk about IQ, and they can kind of measure things like that. But what they can't quite quantify is our spirit, and that's such a big part of who we are. So whether you read the Neil Flanders book and get that understanding of Hebrew psychology, we actually have leadership principles that match perfectly, and there's been amazing things. So some of my other talks that I've done talk deeper in this, but our kids are learning how to have adversity quotient. And our adults, would you like to have a little more strength that when something happens that you could consider adversity or conflict or hard things, that you have the capacity to be logical and have a good feeling, know how to bring back the information you need to move forward, be able to stick with decisions you've made that are correct, being able to have all those pieces in place so you have a high adversity quotient and you can move through life with that peace and with correct momentum. That's one of the leadership principles that we need to have in place for what we do. So I just want to kind of end on this one just a touch. What we do every day, regardless of what your stewardship is, you are leaving some kind of legacy. Some are going to just go away, and that little piece of what happened is just, it's not a big deal, it's fine. You moved on from that. It's not going to stick and make huge, momentous, it's not going to be on the news. But what if we could? What if we could unify and say, well, we know what the true principles are. We can create a living system where people who all have a desire for good things can come together as a network and be able to build truth, be able to learn line upon line, be able to apply as it matters to that individual community, to be able to take pieces but have a connection. So as more truth comes to light, as all these amazing things, as people are inspired in different things, there's a grounding point where there's a cause to be able to have a family education model where we can really learn and grow together, and then everyone is really edified and strengthened because it's a living education system. It's something that's meant to continue to grow, but something that has enough structure and foundation that, kind of like the kite flying, right? The structure is there, the systems are in place, but now there's room to really personalize and say, here's exactly, for my child, I have pure local control. But then I have a structure there that protects my local control, that no one can step in and take this away from me. We feel like with American Family Education that we are creating a living education system. It's outside of those coercive things that we've experienced. It's outside of the Pinterest search for, oh my gosh, what do I do next? It's organized, and we really seek to leave a legacy for each individual child to be able to find their own mission and purpose, but also to be able to really make a difference. So that's who we are, and we have a website. There's a lot more information. I highly encourage to go on there. Any piece of how to do this is really actually a systematized, you can go in and learn line upon line. You can have access to so much truth and light, and it's not dumped on you. You kind of go in and you start. We recommend on your other flyer that has a flag, if you flip that over, it talks about the Start Here tab. Oh, I talked about that at the beginning. That's a great place to start. Start there. Even if you're going to do completely your own thing on a completely different script model, to understand those true principles hopefully brings you some light and truth. And there's so much light and truth available for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear.
Question.
Oak has a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would like you to describe to everyone just the average, like how the week is set up.
Okay.
So that you have the times, Tuesday through Thursday, and then what the other time is used for, and then also the 4 stages that somebody moves through.
Awesome. All right. Oak wants me to teach you about how my school works. So it's really fun. So basic foundational principles, we don't divide by grade, we don't divide by age. Can we all agree our children are not hamburgers? Have you all seen that video? Oh, it's fantastic. It's one of the things that we've built into that Start Here tab. They're not a product to be molded and shaped. These are children, and they develop a little differently. but there's stages that they go through to be able to have the capacity to lead independent, self-directed, motivated lives. And so and it's fun because there's a lot of systems or education models that have similar stages, but they do something different with them. And so I hope you recognize the differences. For us, it starts with foundations. Parents are absolutely leading that out. If you keep them home to be able to have really good information, really good support, and a guide to how do we teach our kids the foundations of how to read? How do we build that connection? How do we get that going? They're really, really young. Awesome. But if you need to come into a group to be able to have just that most important piece so the world opens up, to be able to have a place that works very efficiently, but works with having that good feeling and all of that, that's our foundations group. So that's the first developmental level for children. And I'm not going to tell you the ages of that, because that's not how it works. And then the next level is explorers. So in explorers, these kiddos, they know how to read, they know how to write. It's time to learn why. It's time to learn how to love learning and be excited and be able to see things that they wouldn't normally be exposed to, right? Our education is stretching us out of what's familiar. They're getting a chance to do scientific experiments and be in charge of their own, little herb garden, being able to see, these are the building blocks of language. These are the building blocks of math. These are fun. We can play with these. We understand these principles. This is great. Learning is really fun. But then they kind of grow out of that, like a shirt that's too small. And they start to feel like, well, I have some stuff I want to go dive into. I want to kind of go read on my own or go study, or I want to do something more. So the teacher was leading that, or the parent was really leading that. Now they get a chance to move into the beginning part of scholar phase. And then the end, we'll talk about that in a second. But really for scholars, in that developmental level, they get a chance to have goals that are set that match their why. So you see that bottom box on your handout? When we go through and we do goals planning once a month, they're lining up their academic tools, their expectations of what's getting done. So it starts with parents are creating that, and the kids are learning to be accountable and follow it. And then eventually they earn the chance to write their own goals and bring that to mom and dad and say, here is my plan for the week and my plan for the month. I'm going to do these academic principles. I have these personal goals I'm working on. I have these leadership principles I'm working on. I have these things for scouts. I have these things for church. I have these things for this. Here's what I'm going to get done. And I understand this is where I'm going with my why. And to have that conversation of fantastic, you want to have this kind of life. And these are the academics you're working on. Do you see how they match? Yeah. And if mom has input, well, I think we could do a little more right here. I'd like to see on your plan that you're really doing some personal scripture study in the morning. I feel like that would be a really good blessing for you. And then that child going, oh, well, I see that this is where I want to go with my future. I see that that would be a support for me. That would help me get there. That would be a good habit to create. And then everything starts making sense and ordering, and to be able to have leaders within the school that help facilitate that are backup. Because if you have that conversation with a child that's straight out of a public school, how's that going to go? What in the world are you talking about? We've done this with older kids who parents thought that they totally knew how to set goals. No clue. And that's okay. That's where they start. But to have a leader, and that's their role within the system, to support and encourage, to kind of help model that. And when mom starts to say, or dad starts to say, here's some things I'd like to see, this is important to me, but I see that it's really the thing that would be best for my child. You've got someone there saying, do you see why they love you so much that they're encouraging these correct things? Isn't that awesome that your parents love you enough that they'll help you, be able to look at what you need kind of further down the road because your parents totally know? Isn't that awesome? So you've got that backup built in. So that scholar developmental level, they're really learning how to take that ownership of their education, and they get a chance to do all kinds of awesome things. And then there's a mission phase at the end. And at that mission phase, that developmental level, that's where you get a chance to really take children that know their mission and purpose. They know where they want to go. They have a great foundation. They passed building blocks. They passed learning how to set and honor goals, how to return a report. They've shaped their purpose. Maybe every month it was something totally different, but they're starting to really recognize what that really is. And now they can really start running with that and start doing things like mentoring with somebody who's in the field where they want to go and excel in. Where they can go and start reaching out a little further, but still having foundational points where they're learning how to absolutely have the ownership and the equity in themselves to be successful in their personal mission and purpose. So that's how we divide the children, if you want to put it that way. And then the structure of the day, we want to start with the right spirit there. So we start with devotional. And I'm not going to get into all the bits. There's pieces in there, and online has some more details. But the idea is you want to have the right feeling in the room. You want to be able to inspire the children and model correct principles and correct things, but then you want to give them room that they feel ownership and that they feel excited and that they feel like they understand how everything's connected. And so we move between different subjects, but really what we're doing is we're giving them a chance to see their entire education as a whole piece from these different key points. I don't know, yeah, it's on the website. So under our, whatever tab that is, it talks about us. I don't remember what that is directly, but it talks about kind of our curriculum philosophy. And there's a picture of a house that we've kind of built. And we talk about the main things are skills like how to learn from discussion and how to learn discipline and how to learn how to discover, things like that. Those are the real skills that these kids need, but we leverage tools like science and math and history, and it's so much fun. I could talk for like 3 days on this, but it's so much fun. But when you leverage a tool for what it's for, all of a sudden we have kids that come to us, and in about a couple weeks, they say, I almost am embarrassed about this, but history is my favorite subject. Well, yeah. And we have parents who want to come and be a part of that because now history, those leadership principles we went through, we don't learn history to be able to take a test or memorize facts. It's not very inspiring, right? We actually dive into history looking for evidence of those leadership principles. When those were in place, what was the result? Who were the people that made a difference because they were strong in one of those leadership principles? How do we take that information, learn from them so we can become the leaders to make a better future? And so history has all this purpose and use because these kids are learning these principles, and history is a way to dive in to be able to find them and to recognize how they were modeled. So, super fun. Does that help? Oh, and limited time. So each individual community that decides they want to form up in any way they want to form up, or a family, you have the freedom to try your agency and do what you want. What we found is we have a model that works really well, and it's for those of our groups that have started on their own path to do it their own way, they kind of shift into, really, if you just have like 3 days a week, and it's in an outside location that's specifically dedicated for educational pursuits, and you're done by lunch. And it could absolutely be an afternoon session, but something where it's just about 4 hours a day, 3 days a week. You can have the most amazing, uplifting, the kids bring snacks and eat while they're learning because your brain's working and that whole thing is so fun. And then by the end of the day, they're like, okay, whew, it's great. And the ones that are ready to move further, there's no teacher homework. The kids are choosing that they want to keep the learning going. They want to accomplish more. And so they're really starting to push and direct some of their own learning, which is awesome. And then outside of that time, you have time for what we call electives, or that discretionary studies. Wouldn't that be fantastic if your kids understood that they have a purpose and mission that would be blessed by a specific skill? It's available, and it's at a time that's reasonable, so it's not impeding on family time. And there's a connecting point right with the same people that they love and trust for their school. And the perspective of why that skill was being offered is because it has bigger intrinsic value. Not because it's something to fill your time, but it's because it matches in with what you're learning about yourself and where you're going with your future. So that's the environment, whether it's horseback riding lessons or languages, or we have like a science lab and just all these different things. Those are the electives you can pick. So the structure could be a traditional school day, but instead they are getting so filled and all of these amazing experiences. Or you could say, you know what, we just want to come for those basic core things that really help our child get their foundation set. Or we've got this at home, maybe we want to come together as a group for this one elective piece. Awesome. So we're really kind of setting up these like learning centers that can be called a private school, can be called whatever, but it's really kind of like a beacon for truth in education, which is really fun. Did that answer what you're looking for?
Yeah. So we only have a couple more minutes, but if you have a quick question, go ahead and ask real quick, and then we'll have a little discussion while we get ready for the next speaker. Any questions?
Yes.
So what you're saying is that you teach principles and a philosophy predominantly homeschoolers apply in a co-op or cooperative community. You don't have school buildings, you don't have charters, you don't have paid teachers.
That's a really good question. Can I answer that? And then if I don't fully answer it, let me know. So she asked if we're, just a homeschool co-op and we just kind of teach parents how to be more homeschool and organized. I mentioned that it can be a co-op, but like we talked about the financial piece for that leadership principle, to be able to, whether it's avoid or whether it's heal or whether it's just do something different, the model of compensated stewardships is so much more productive and it's more of a safeguard. And so kind of the ultimate end is a private school, not in the sense of probably anything you've ever seen, but in the sense of it is privately funded. I'm investing in my child's education. I'm choosing to go here. That's my choice, even if it comes through scholarships or if it comes somewhere else. But I chose that. I had power of where those funds went, so it's private. And it's a physical school where the teachers went through a very intensive, doesn't take very long, but they went through a certification process to clean out old thinking and to understand what their role in stewardship was. So there's accountability and there's a learning process even for the staff there, but where anyone who's participating in that has a compensation based on their stewardship. And we do things very differently. It's not based on time. No one's hired to fill a role. No one's paid by hour. If a teacher is offering a class for an elective and it's very popular, it's very needed, a lot of children really, really want to participate, and that teacher has the capacity to serve that many children, they're compensated differently versus a teacher that's offering something wonderful, but the community doesn't need it. That's not something necessary. It's a really fun extra. That teacher can absolutely still offer that, but they're not compensated the same. And so it's really more of a community that comes in and you get to have that culture of how much are you serving? Okay, that's how much you're compensated. So it really creates this balance. And then it creates a lot of safeguards so you can have the environment that you really, really want. Does that answer your question? So it could start as a co-op, or it could be a co-op forever if that community decides that they have enough patience and perspective to just no one pays for anything, no one gets compensated for anything, and everyone holds to the principles of not overstepping the parental stewardship. I haven't seen that happen yet. Even in really amazing co-ops, there's so much burnout and there's so much, well, this teacher felt like maybe they were the source of truth, so they weren't quite following the program, but they're awesome, but they're kind of giving the impression they're the source of truth. We lose a little bit of that accountability whenever it's outside of, a compensated community model. So we like that model. Okay. And then there was a question over here. Yes.
I was just wondering what you've seen. I'm assuming there's somewhat of a transition period for people coming out of a public school system into something like what you're describing.
We call it detox.
Yeah, and that's a great word to
Yeah.
describe that, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but is that a really difficult, lengthy process to really disengage from what they are used to as kids in a public school to coming into a totally different atmosphere of having that agency?
Awesome. Okay, so how long does it take? Does everyone go through it? And what does it look like? And it's fun because, yes, it's different for every individual. And the timing, we can't give you a timeline and a calendar of this is exactly the day that your child will shift and go, oh, my education is my responsibility. And there's a reason for it. I'm excited about this now. But there are absolute tools within the system that create the environment and create the opportunity and build up in the parents how to help make that happen faster. With younger kids, they usually don't really need to detox. It's the parents that need to detox. Can we all agree? We need to detox from that thinking and from all of that. And so there's all these tools in place if you take advantage of them. And usually what we've seen is anyone who has even half of a willing heart, it can happen in a couple months, even for kids that are already in that 12 years old and up stage. We've seen older teenagers be able to come in. They just need to understand their worth. Once a child really understands their worth, which has kind of been beaten out of them, just follow our system. Once they understand their worth and they know that this is an opportunity for them, there's all this natural motivation built in place, and you can use all the different levels of motivation in this environment to help them. It can go so fast, where if mom's detoxing and child's detoxing in a homeschool environment, that's when I feel that that's what unschooling is for. don't try to like detox specifically, just play and read and reconnect and love on each other. And then when it's time to move forward, something productive, because you've got those old patterns that are so loud in your subconscious even, then to be able to have a structure with support helps you rocket through where you really want to go. And then at that point, once you've got that foundation set, if you want to travel all over the world using a model, you've built a pattern for you and your children of how you talk to each other, how you set goals, do all of that. So this could even just be a tool to set your family in a place to give you freedom to move to whatever you're called to do next. Yeah.
So online, is there a model for outside? Obviously, you kind of set up this kind of schoolish type outside the home to support the home environment, but is there a model for places like this where that doesn't exist? So just a home model to teach those skills.
Yeah, so if a parent wants to come in and do all of the training that we have available from all the different roles, you totally can. And what we're creating is we're also creating a way to plug in to like a virtual, like a leader that can help support you when it's time to do that goals planning, to do that. But the ultimate is to find some friends and to form up. So in this area, you guys are going to be getting a school soon. And to be able to have a center place where you do meet together. But there are some families that say, yes, I totally want to do this on my own. Fantastic. There's nothing to stop you. We would encourage you to get that perspective of everything that we do. Just learn and learn how these different roles, if you want to change hats. But it's really, really fun when you can say, I wear the mom hat. So I'm mentor, I'm encourager, I know you the best, and someone else is kind of facilitator. Someone else is kind of expert in this specific thing. It works really, really well, but it can be done. Okay, is that it?
Okay, yeah,
Awesome.
thank you very much.